Breakthrough Real Estate Investing Podcast, episode 97.
Hello and welcome to the Breakthrough Real Estate Investing Podcast. We put this show together to inspire you and help you break through to the life that you want to live through the power of real estate investing. My name is Rob Brake. Here with me again is Sandy McKay.
Hey.
How's it going, Sandy?
I'm fantastic. You?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm excited about this two-part series that we have today to share with the listeners. We're going to do part one, and we're going to cover the buy, renovate, refinance, and rent strategy. A lot of our listeners are doing this. It seems to be one of those strategies that, is very attractive because you can sort of rinse out and repeat, I guess, pull your money back out and keep going. So a lot of people do call it the buy fix refinancing strategy. So it just depends, but we're going to call it the BRRRR strategy today. And we've got part one, which is going to consist of, I guess, two guests. We're going to talk about the buy and the renovate portions on the show today. So who better to talk about the buy than Mr. Cashflow, our previous guest from a couple of times he's been on. So I'm excited to have Adrian back on today. I'll just say a quick welcome, Adrian. Appreciate you coming back.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me back. My pleasure.
And episodes 38 and 62. If anyone wants to go revisit that. I don't know if you were even using your real name back then.
I don't think I was.
It was just Mr. Cashflow.
Yeah, I think we were still hiding it. I was still a police officer back then. It's got to be a few years ago now, right? At least 4 or 5 years ago.
At least three, anyways. I think it was around 3 years ago.
Yeah, definitely three for sure.
So just quickly before we dive into things, I want to always recommend everyone hop over to our website, breakthroughreipodcast.ca. You can pick up our free report there, The Ultimate Strategy for Building Wealth Through Real Estate, which actually dives a little bit into this BRRRR strategy. In that report there, you're going to get that. You're also going to get on our email list, which will help keep you updated on all the episodes as they come out, property tours that we're doing in our local areas, events we're running, all sorts of stuff. So you want to get on that just so you don't miss out on anything. And so you make sure you get notified about some opportunities to come out to some great events and meet us in person sometime.
And last but not least, before we jump into this, we always would like to recommend that people go over to iTunes and hit the subscribe button. I know there's a lot of different ways that people get this podcast, but iTunes has been very supportive. And of course, you can leave a review there, and that helps us out as well. So go on over to iTunes, Breakthrough REI Podcast, and subscribe.
And we'll dive right into it here. So, like we said, I got our first part of this series here with Mr. Cashflow, Adrian Pannozzo. And what's going to be exciting here is we're going to dive pretty deep into the specific portions of this. We've done some BRRRR talk before, but I think we're going to get a little deeper into the segments of it, which should be exciting. Adrian himself, he's the owner of Executive Properties Capital, which is an investment company, a real estate investment company that works with investors and really their goal primarily is to help them build their own version of generational wealth through partnering with them in the company. So they really look after three main goals with their investor clients. So that's those three being building money for retirement, extra money for retirement, financing their children's education in full, and thirdly, paying off their mortgage on their personal home a whole bunch faster. And so on this episode, we're going to dive deep into that first portion of the strategy, like we said, the buy, and we're really excited about it. So again, welcome, Adrian. And why don't you start us off? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your own investing journey up to this point.
All right, then. Well, thanks, Sandy, for having me back on the show. As you already know, I began investing in real estate 9 years ago when I was a police officer, working in the city of Toronto and whatnot. And I started buying investment properties all in the city of Hamilton, and really focusing on multifamilies, duplexes, triplexes, quads, so on and so forth. And through networking in Hamilton, obviously, Sandy and I met, and decided to go into business together a few years back now, and kind of put our strengths together. And since then, we've now started our company, Executive Capital, and we are now just combined properties. We're just hovering around 200 units, if you will, which is equivalent to, I think we just hit 50 properties now, Sandy, together, all multifamily homes, and which is also equivalent to, believe it or not, it's hard to believe, just shy of $40 million in real estate holdings that we've accumulated together for, well, us and our joint venture partners that have put the trust in us to invest in partnership with buying these multifamily homes, again, all in Hamilton. So that's kind of fast forward, I guess, 9 years to today, and where we are today.
Well, first of all, let me say, Mike, that's a huge accomplishment what you guys have done there, by the way. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And now let's talk about, because I mean, obviously there's a formula that you guys have used and perfected over the years to get there. So can you take us through the process of buying, or I guess what you look for when you're out trying to find the perfect property to use this strategy?
Sure. So step number one is we're out there looking for distressed properties. These properties are structurally sound, which is obviously very important, but they are distressed. For example, you know, an older couple has been living in the properties for a number of years and they haven't been able to upkeep or renovate or you know, change the old knob and tube wiring, the plumbing, and so on and so forth. So we come along and obviously do a very thorough analysis on that property with respect to, you know, obviously our purchase price, then what our renovation budget is going to be on that particular project. And then ultimately a very important piece is the refinance portion at the end, and the analysis on, you know, if we dump all this money into this house to renovate it, what is the bank going to appraise this house for at the end of the project? And that process is extremely important because our goal is to extract, and our joint venture partners as well, is to extract all of our capital, including our renovation and including our 20% down payment on the house, out at the end of that project. And we do that because we like the ability to circulate our capital into upcoming projects and upcoming opportunities that arise moving forward. So we always try to keep our capital clear and free and not locked into a property, which will obviously sooner or later, everybody is going to run out of money if you leave 150, 200 in a property without extracting that. And last but not least, I would say on average, we're extracting all of our capital and our renovation budget, give or take between 6 to 7 months, start to finish in that project.
So we've always heard that the buy is the most important thing. In that, like, really you or one, whoever's out buying the property, is really responsible for being able to understand all of the rest of the steps that come afterwards, right? In order to make an educated decision on whether or not this is the property where you'd be able to do all those things that you were just talking about.
Absolutely. I want to say every step in this process is extremely important. If you overpay, you know, you could wind up at the end of that project leaving money in. If you don't budget your renovations properly and you budget that you're going to spend $50,000, for example, on the property, and you wind up spending $150 on the property, now that's going to throw your numbers off at the end as well. So now you're leaving money in the property. And then lastly, if your analysis on what the market is doing and what the new value of this place is going to be at the end, if that's off and you budget, let's say your numbers are saying we're going to come in at 500,000 on the refinance, but we come in at 410, now you're leaving 90K, for example, in that project. So again, I think every step is important along the way, for sure.
Linked to the buy itself.
Absolutely.
The buy is the first one, right? So if you screw that up, you can't really, it's very difficult to fix a horrible buy. I guess you can always, I mean, you know, unless you really blow it, there's always going to be a way to make it work out reasonably well. Although,
you know what?
Buy is really crucial for sure.
Yeah, and I think honestly, in the long run, a bad buy, you know, you can deal with it down the road. But I mean, for this kind of a strategy, if you're not looking to just buy and hold and appreciate and maybe, you know, come out of it on the positive note down the road, which I think that you could do if you just, you know, pulled up MLS and stuck your finger on the computer screen. The key to this is being able to extract that money and move on. So the buy is super important. I would imagine for you, it's kind of important to you stick to what you know, right? Like, so
Absolutely.
do you try to find similar properties to purchase, or do you look for different styles of properties, or what do you do there?
Our niche is really the multifamily homes, ranging all the way from, you know, starting at a duplex, for example, all the way up to, we're actually diving now into multi-purpose buildings. So more of the commercial side of things as well. But we've done it all. We've done the duplexes, and we've done up to, you know, 6, 8 unit, 10 unit buildings that we've incorporated this strategy and been successful at the end of the rainbow as well. So yeah, multifamily buildings really is where our strengths lie.
And if you're analyzing those opportunities, how do you actually do that when you're looking at a property potentially? You know, somebody comes across your desk, or someone tells you, "Hey, this I found this one," or you find a property and you're searching. How do you look at it? Like, what are you looking at before you even get to the property? What are you looking at to determine that it's an actual potential opportunity? What are the key things?
I can't stress enough a very thorough analysis on the numbers. Really, it all comes down, as we're all investors, it all comes down to the numbers, right? So we're focusing really on, again, our purchase price, our rental budget, our carrying and holding costs, for example, also have to be taken into consideration. And then ultimately, very, very crucial as well is what's this going to appraise for after we dump all this money into that? And that's doing a fair market analysis on the comparables that are obviously at the same level that you're bringing this property to, right? And obviously in a commercial component, it really comes down to, as opposed to residential. So if you're talking about apartment buildings, it really comes down to what's this building now going to generate in rents after all the rehab is done to that building. So those, again, it really, really comes down to a really strong analysis on the numbers.
I think it would stand to reason that the property, like, you could find this type of property that you're talking about, you could find it in more readily in a bad area, let's say, than you can in a good area. I would imagine the ones that are in good areas, obviously, they always say location, 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 right? But can you make something like this work in the not so desirable areas?
Absolutely. Again, you're gonna fluctuate your market rents depending on the area as well, and obviously your major component is that purchase price. So you're gonna really determine what the value and a good price on that home is, considering it's not in that AAA area. We're in a C, maybe a C- area. That's going to reflect obviously how we negotiate that deal with the seller of that property. And a lot of our stuff we're finding off market as well. We're getting a lot of leads and on properties that haven't even hit MLS that these old folks or whatever they may be want to unload their properties, but they don't want to put it on and disrupt their tenants, or they don't want to put it on MLS for whatever reason it may be. So we're getting a lot of opportunities that way as well. If that,
and then so good area, bad area. I guess it comes down to the market and the rents too, right? Which can you really get decent tenants in those maybe not so great areas? I think every market's going to be a little different. We've had success, I know, in Hamilton with actually getting good quality tenants in almost any area. There are a couple to avoid, but it kind of depends on your market niche. What about getting to the property when you're at the property itself? So you've determined it's a good potential opportunity, and then you drive over, you go, you're standing at the street and looking at it. What are you looking for? What are the main things that are going to determine, yes, I'm going to take the next step on this place, or no, this is right. This is no good?
We really focus on structural components on that building, whether it is a triplex or it is a 10-unit building. Structurally, the structural component is could be a major disaster if we underestimate or we overlook that. So I'm really, really keen on the structural component of the building. So if that's all clear and fine, and structurally it appears strong, for example, as you walk through the building, it isn't kind of all on a 45 leaning to the left or to the right or whatnot. That's what I mean by structural. And once that's satisfied, we put together a very thorough budget and with respect to all the work this place is going to need. And if the numbers don't work based on, how much money we have to dump into those renos, then obviously we walk away. So our analysis after the structural component is satisfied really depends on, obviously, again, back to the numbers. How much are we dumping into this place? Does it need a complete rewire? Does it need a new roof? Does it need all new windows? Typically the stuff we're buying needs, a lot of times we take it right to the shell, but again, that's in our budget. And if I can give any advice, obviously, the bigger the reno, the bigger the lift at the end of the rainbow. So, for example, if you're walking through and, you're just going to change some baseboards, give it a paint job, change some light fixtures, obviously, when the appraiser walks through, you're not going to pull the wool over their eyes. For example, they're going to ask specifically, what have you done here to this property? Let's walk through it. And you're going to have to explain all the improvements you've made at that property. And again, the bigger the reno, the bigger the lift at the end of that refinance. So once we have a very strong renovation budget and we're comfortable with that, we go back to running the numbers again, purchase price, renos, refinance, and then we're able to say the numbers work or the numbers don't work based on that. So a lot of times we bring our preferred contractor through, and they're actually walking through with us and taking notes and obviously giving us budgets on, hey, you guys are looking at 50,000, 80,000, 100,000. So we have that, security or peace of mind as well. It's always a great idea to bring your contractor through. And even though we have all this experience in the strategy, we still to this day bring our contractor through. Does that kind of answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Sandy. Do you have something else?
No.
What do your offers generally look like? So you find something like this and you want to, you're going to put in an offer with the client, whatever. Do you have conditions? Are you trying to go, what does that look like? I guess let's just go there.
Off-market offers, obviously we treat differently than properties that are listed. A lot of these properties that are listed on the MLS, we wind up still to this day, the Hamilton market is incredibly strong. We're still in multiple offers in Hamilton, every week. Nothing's changed. I know other markets obviously aren't as strong, but so back to properties that are on the market and we're in multiple competition. obviously we know the cleaner the offer, obviously the odds of us getting that property are better. We know we're going to strip this property, let's say, to the studs. So I'm not going to put in a condition of home inspection if my contractor and I both feel the property is structurally sound. I'm going to exclude that home inspection condition because I know I'm taking it to the studs. So I don't need a home inspector to tell me it's filled with knob and tube wiring or so on and so forth. So very few conditions on property that's listed. Properties that are off market, our offers typically will have a financing condition. Again, we're working with a lot of joint venture partners who come to us and say they're ready to invest and they want to, get into this partnership with our company. And they need a peace of mind sometimes to potentially get out of the deal if something's not right or whatnot. So we'll throw in a financing condition. It's off market. We're not in competition. So we have that luxury to play with it a bit and secure ourselves and peace of mind for our joint venture partners.
Maybe can you walk us through your own comfort level around that and how the offers have maybe, where you are now is very different, I would imagine, from where you were 6-7 years ago in terms of comfort level with some of these things, right? Can you maybe walk us through maybe even a little bit on the decisions you made too, like early on versus now, and when looking at buying properties? Any insight on that stuff? Yeah,
and obviously it's straightforward, like you said. My comfort level now, rewind 7-8 years ago, it's completely done a 360. Our company's bought properties and offered on properties that have been on the market for 2 hours, and we haven't even seen them, and we're offering on these properties just completely based on the numbers that we've run.
Without even seeing it.
Without even seeing the property, we're offering on it, and we're paying decent money on it just because the numbers still work. Would I have done that 7 years ago? No. Some of our joint venture partners have that trust in us and allow us to do that because obviously we're always communicating with our partners on what we're doing and so on and so forth. Yeah, my level of comfort is completely different. Again, the off-market stuff, we can play a little bit more, but a lot of times we're going in clean on our offers. We typically direct our joint venture partners to get pre-approved with their financing. So we know exactly where that approval is and we're not wasting time. We're throwing in conditions that we don't need. So if we know the client's been approved up to 900,000, on this particular project, then we'll exclude that clause of financing because he's already been pre-approved, and we're not wasting time. We're trying to cover all our bases before we actually have that JV partner proceed with that project. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was another thing too that came to mind there as you were talking about the pre-approval and all that. One line on the spreadsheet of analyzing the numbers would be holding costs and what that looks like. I think, do you analyze that a little bit too, and like if a project's financeable with an A lender and what that would affect on your mortgage and subsequently the holding costs and what those numbers look like when you're running the whole number thing for the project? You want to know that, I assume, right? Is that something?
Absolutely.
And what do you look for in a property to determine if it's what the financing is going to look like?
So we do buy properties that obviously are not financeable at the start, and we're either raising capital or we're obviously going to a hard money lender and borrowing that money at 8-10%. And then depending, if it's a major rental like that, because if the bank's not going to finance it at the purchase, it's usually not habitable. That doesn't scare us, or our joint venture partners. We're going to just run that. We're going to run that expense of carrying that, let's say 400,000 at 10% interest for 6 months. We're going to include that in our analysis with respect to our expenses And at the end of the day, do the numbers still work? Does that kind of answer your question with that?
What will be one or two things that would make it inhabitable? What will be a couple things there that you know for sure, or a very high likelihood that you're not going to get normal financing on a conventional financing?
I would say a common thing we've experienced is major water damage. You know, a pipe burst in the house and flooded the last 2 floors or all floors of the house, for example. And for whatever reason, you know, it hasn't been fixed, or you know, even the seller wants to take the insurance buyout and just wants to walk away from the property. Obviously, it's completely flooded. Just a prime example. Obviously, the bank's not going to finance that because it's not habitable. A property that's, you know, extensive mold, for example, a bank's not going to finance that. Situations like that, if the property doesn't have any kitchens in it, or all the bathrooms are gutted and all the kitchens are gutted, bank's probably not going to finance it. Different situations, but we've run into those. And again, if the numbers work, we'll still buy those properties, again, with a very, very thorough analysis.
Thanks, Adrian. Last but not least, let's talk about what you think are some of the biggest mistakes that you see investors make when they're looking at buying a property, or when they have bought it.
I think, you know, really working with the right professionals. When you're an investor, obviously, I would more refer to people that are starting out. I've seen them make a lot of mistakes because they're running around, and I see the different agents that are taking them to see properties and whatnot. And you really need to have a very strong team around you, starting with your realtor and or your joint venture partner who has that experience from A to Z to take you down the path. I'm seeing different showings and whatnot, other agents who have absolutely, you know, zero experience in the investment world with multifamily homes, taking these clients out and trying to give them advice. And I just shake my head, because as soon as things, and with every project, there's stuff that comes up, and you know, the road isn't always smooth. There's always bumps in the road. And as soon as something comes up, you know, how is this person's on their own basically to make all these major decisions, right from even just hiring the right contractor. A huge component of this strategy. Without the good contractor on your team, and you've heard horror stories where contractors start and then they disappear and then they come back and then they take the guy's money and they disappear again. Like, again, having a solid team, starting from your realtor all the way to your contractor, your mortgage broker, so on and so forth. Huge value in that. So really do your homework if you're a new investor with respect to the team you're working with and how they're going to guide you through this. Ask your realtor, how many investment properties do you own? How many investment projects have you been through yourself personally? If they say none, probably not the realtor to work with. You know, and obviously do your due diligence with your contractor, right? Get your references from him, go see his jobs, talk to more than, you know, 3-4 of his clients, and do your due diligence with him as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's more of a guide for what they should do, which is probably better than the mistakes that you've seen people make anyway. No, I agree. You know, how could someone, especially like when there's such so many details that need to be gone over, as far as, you know, what the property can be used for, how much money you're going to be able to pull out of it, what type of rentals are needed, like all of that stuff. If you don't have a good team around you, you're never going to be able to put those numbers together just to figure out whether the buy is a good buy or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think doing a general analysis, you know, you get a property worksheet off the internet or something, and it tells you all the things to look for. Okay, it's step one maybe. Although there's a lot, like, how do you know what this is going to cost or that's going to cost? How do you know what the use is really of the property? How do you know, like, how do you know all these little details without having a really great team of professionals around you? It's pretty much impossible for any, you know, average person out there to know that stuff without having years and years of experience on it, working on it yourself, right?
Absolutely. I kind of look at it, you know, you want to go to the Olympics, and let's just say you want to go to the Olympics in swimming competition, and you obviously need a coach to get you to the Olympics, a trainer, a professional to obviously get you to that level. So when you're interviewing your trainer, your personal trainer, who's going to train you to get to the Olympics, you're going to want to know, how many athletes have you trained? How many athletes that you trained actually made it to the Olympics, for example, so on and so forth. Like, what's your bio? What's your credentials? Like, what's your experience? And the same with real estate investing. Your team, ask every single person on your team, so you're not overpaying. Very common. You overpay for the property. You know, ask them what their level of experience is and how many times they've done this. You know, I can safely say after 9 years and then of investing myself, and then with the experience that I have, and obviously with Sandy's experience as well, there's probably no scenario that we haven't experienced in the 9 years with real estate investing and obviously the BRRRR strategy that we can't navigate or we haven't navigated through. And I think that that's worth its weight in gold when you're looking for the right team and who to joint venture partner with, right? You have one really bad experience, probably going to deter you from doing it again. I hope that answers your question.
Adrian, you've been great. You've shared a lot of stuff with us today. I know that everyone's going to get, you know, more out of this than they do with our typical interviews where we talk to somebody about using this strategy. So thanks a lot.
You know what, Rob? Let me throw one thing for everyone out there listening, and because I think it's as beneficial that I've seen a few people do, but maybe not enough. Just send out, if you're looking at buying a property, send you, Rob, whoever, send us the deal. Let us know what you're thinking. What does it look like? We'll have a quick review, and we'll maybe air it on the show and review it sometime.
That sounds good. I like that.
I think we could add some value to people that way and help them make a decision. Might not be able to do it in the right time for you, because you might need to act faster than that. Although, send it to us. We'll let you know what we think, and hopefully we can help you out making decisions. Yes, that's a go ahead, buy it. No, definitely not. You know, maybe we can steer some people the right direction that way. I'm sure Adrian would do the same if people want to reach out.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a look at it, run the numbers with you, and see if we can help you out.
That'd be interesting, I think. How can people get in touch with you, Adrian?
Shoot me a quick email, executiveproperties, IES, @rogers.com. And then I'd love to hear from you if I can help you out or give you the right advice or potential joint venture in a project together. Definitely interested in that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks.
Cheers.
So our second guest here on part one of our BRRRR series is Lee Pollock, owner of Vision Construction Management, which is a construction management company based out of Hamilton, and really works primarily with investors to help them create quality, safe rental units. And Lee's an investor himself who owns a sizable portfolio across Southern Ontario, and he's also one of the key members of our power team here in the Hamilton area. So welcome to the show, Lee.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
And Sandy, what specifically is Lee going to be talking about today as the second part?
Exactly. So again, just to recap, we've talked about the buy part of the buy, renovate, refinance, and rent strategy, and we're gonna move on now to the renovation portion. So we're gonna focus on construction and how to handle the construction portion of the strategy, which is really a pretty key part, one that I think a lot of people have some challenges with, right?
Definitely. You know, when I'll ask the guests the type of challenges that they've run into, because I can relate so much on a construction level to that question, that's always what I expect the answer to be. And most times it's not. Most times it's, you know, they'll talk about financing, or, I mean, we'll get to all these things too, but, or they'll talk about, you know, I don't know, emotional stress or, you know, overcoming their fear to get into it. But you know, there's something to be said for this practical element here that really needs to be focused on, and you need to understand and get somebody who understands working with the city, all those kind of things, in order to avoid those challenges, or at least the best you can when you run into those challenges, get around them. And so, Lee, I'm really happy to have you here to talk about these things today, because I think it's super important. So thanks for being here.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. You know, when I first started investing in Hamilton, and this is probably going back maybe 5 years ago, 6 at the most, my biggest challenge was getting caught up with contractors and trades and trying to manage projects while having a full-time job. You know, contractors falling short with budgets and timelines, and just generally not even finishing the job and having to switch contractors halfway through. There was a short period where I went on a buying frenzy, and you know, Sandy sold me a full whack of houses, but I got stuck with, I think, about 4 or 5 projects, and I didn't have anybody to work on them. I ended up hiring my own guys and slowly started building a crew of people. And, you know, flash forward today, you know, I'm still buying my own real estate, but working with investors with my own construction company. And we've built up, I think we're right around the 20 employee mark right now. And things are going very strong.
Well, that's good to hear. Let's go back and talk about how you got into real estate investing. What got you interested in it?
That would be Adrian Pannozzo, and brought me up to Hamilton. I did my first project with him back in, I want to say 2014. We did a very successful 4-unit project. Sandy sold it to us, the one on West. And, you know, after that, I was just hooked. So I kept going. I kept buying projects on my own, and, you know, working with Sandy and his team, and, you know, then building up my own portfolio, and then eventually off to my own construction company. I was going to say five years later, I think last count I'm up to about 60, just over 60 doors now.
Fantastic. And
not all in Hamilton, right? You do have some others in a few other markets.
I have a small building in Welland, but primarily it's, you know, aside from the building in Welland, everything is in Hamilton.
What I wanted to ask you is, I guess you started out with that strategy right away. From what you're saying here, is the well, we're calling it BRRR strategy, BRRR strategy. So on that first property, you said that, you know, the returns were what you were looking for, and everything worked out. It was very successful. Let's maybe talk about the reason why then you decided to start another company. Like, let's transition to that spot where you said you had 4 properties and no one really to work on them. So that lit a fire under you, and you decided to go your own way and start a construction company.
Right. So I had a contractor. I was doing a project in Toronto, and I brought this specific contractor up to Hamilton, thinking he was, you know, my savior and going to be able to take 200 projects. And he ended up being like a lot of smoke and mirrors. You know, took all the business, but got nothing done. I went through another contractor. You know, pretty much the same thing had happened. And I was really stuck. I was stuck, you know, funding these mortgage payments. You know, I had 4 houses that were basically sitting vacant, that were all torn apart. And it was at a point where I think he even spoke to Sandy about it. You know, I was pretty frustrated and wanted to sell them. And anyways, I ended up not quitting, not giving up, and I hired 3 people almost immediately just to work for me full time as a sole proprietorship, not even set up as a corporation. And those 3, actually 2 of those guys are still working for me full time. And this is from 5 years ago. And then we started the corporation back in September, Vision Construction Management. And we hired right out of the gate. We hired about a dozen people, almost within the span of maybe less than a month. Anyways, most of those people are still with us, and we've kept growing and we've kept building on that. We're doing things a little bit differently than I think some of the other contractors out there. How we're handling things is a little bit more with true and honest timelines and true and honest budgets. So the timelines might not be exactly what the clients want to hear with, the 2 to 3 months, but we're a little bit more realistic with them. We're more realistic with the budgets, and we seem to be getting the jobs done within the timelines and within budgets.
So I think that that's a really good thing. That's something that you pointed out there, specifically in that a lot of contractors will just take on job after job after job and not try to figure out how they're going to complete all the work. That's sort of the least of the worries. Just getting that person locked in and working with them seems to be the most important thing for a lot of them.
A lot of contractors take a hefty deposit up front on, let's say $100,000 contract. Some of these guys want 20, 30, 40% up front before they even touch your walls type of thing. We're not doing that. We do, if your project is going to be, for argument's sake, 4 months, which is 16 weeks, we take bi-weekly payments spread over the 16 weeks. And we don't take a payment until we start. And it seems to be working that way, which is good for us. It's good for the client. They're not putting out too much risk with dollars up front. We're not holding their money and using it to fund somebody else's project. We have a network of people, trades that we're working with. We do everything exclusively in-house, and we work with the same electrician. We work with the same plumber. We work with the same HVAC. We work with the same roofer. So we're working with the same group of people, and we're keeping them essentially busy, full time for the most part, which is working really well. And everything is basically boiled down to we have it set apart in 3 phases of construction. So right to the point where we know, the client will know, and we know before we start exactly what materials are needed, and everything's ordered essentially up front.
Lou, why don't you give us an overview of what your projects generally look like? What's the timeline kind of consist of, and how do you ensure that the construction is done on time and on budget? Because on time and budget, really, time is the one that I think a lot of people struggle with. And as an investor, right, if you're buying a project, some of the contractors, the conversations I've had is, well, we're only a month late. It's not a big deal. A month late is a month of rent potentially, right? And if you're talking about a 3 or 4 multi-unit property, it's rent on multiple units. So we're talking about thousands of dollars of lost income, right? So it's a pretty important thing to nail the timelines. How do you ensure that happens, that you stick on the timelines?
Well, we stick to a schedule, basically. So, for us, a typical project, if we're going in, we found that rather than try to patch walls and save the existing sort of, garbage that's in the house, we found that it's easier and faster from a construction standpoint just to basically get everything completely out of the house, right down to the brick wall. Start with new framing, all new electrical, all new plumbing, all new HVAC, all new insulation, all new vapor barrier. Everything's done. We also find it easier actually to work with permits. That way we're not dodging the city. That way we don't have a risk of getting caught, which delays projects, causes stress and aggravation for the contractor and the investor. And there's obviously, there's ways to do things afterwards with, potential units and basements and lofts and stuff. But we found that if we are sticking to that type of schedule, then things flow much, much easier, and we can stick to a schedule. And the reason for that is simply that we're using all new materials. We're not taking new materials and try to mash them up to old materials, which have a lot more labor-intensive man hours to put like a door on old framing. we're not cutting doors. We're using pre-hung doors. We're using, trim that we're basically cutting to size and slapping them on new construction. So new construction is far easier. You're also getting a better product, a better finish, and everything is going to last much longer.
How did you come up with that? Like, did you have some struggles with that yourself in the past, I guess? Is that how you decided on that, or what made you decide to go that route? And I guess you obviously must have to convince some clients, I guess, to do that. Would that be something that's all the clients want to do?
We actually had 2 projects running simultaneously that started within 2 weeks from one another. One project it didn't need to be gutted. It was a lot of patchwork and repair work. We had to take down some existing walls because everybody wants open concept. But what we found was the other project was a distress project. Nothing could be saved. Everything had to be completely removed. And that project actually got finished sooner. And I think the reason for that was because, to get in and frame a house, and frame it to spec, to drawings, put in your new LVLs and go that route was a lot quicker, even putting up the drywall, all brand new drywall, than, taping, old plaster to new drywall and not being happy with the finish. And, some of the guys that are doing the patchwork, they take pride in their work. So what they'll do is they'll spend, on a day trying to butt joint 2 seams together, and it ties up a lot of man hours. So I think, if I remember correctly, the project that we realized was back to back with the one that was sort of like a patch and repair job, got finished almost 3 weeks faster. And really the cost savings between the two, or I shouldn't say the cost savings, but the difference in cost wasn't that great. You're talking about, minimal amount more in materials. The labor was actually the same. The client paid a little bit more for materials. So a little bit more in drywall, a little bit more in lumber. Other than that, both jobs had to be all new electrical, all new plumbing. But again, there's a lot more man hours when you're talking about working with older materials and trying to salvage what's there.
Well, I guess especially if you're doing all new electrical and all new plumbing and things like that, like if that's what you're doing anyways, then I mean, to try and get that stuff through the walls and then patch it up it's never going to look quite right doing all that patchwork.
It doesn't look right. It takes longer to do. And at the end of the day, I'm always not happy with the results. And I know the homeowners aren't happy with the results. And we just kind of slough it off and usually say, you know what, it's a rental property. We don't have to live there. And it's okay for some of the houses where they're not that bad. But in my experience, the majority, a lot of these houses in Hamilton, and exceptionally all the ones that we're working on currently, they're all 100% guts. We're taking them right down to the brick now.
Well, thanks, Lee. Now, we're trying to get some golden nuggets here for our listeners as far as the Renovate portion goes of the BRRR strategy. So what do you think are the key things that investors should look for when hiring a company for renovating?
Really, to work with a management company, somebody that has, everything at their disposal. So somebody who has access to, all areas of construction, not just, not just electrical, not just, plumbing, that they really work with, an in-house team, that they don't have to sub things out like painting. They don't have to sub things out. The more you have to subcontract out, the less control you have over everything, because you're working with other people's schedules and timelines, which means you're working with potential delays and potential people not showing up. And then also there's the workmanship on top of it. You can't control what you don't have in-house. So that's the one thing that I think people should look for. If you're working with a contractor, most contractors subcontract most stuff out. Construction management companies, they actually manage everything in-house. So it goes back to what I said. We do everything in-house except for electrical and except for plumbing. And the reason why we're not doing plumbing is because we're doing, we've really switched, and we're promoting to work with everything on permits. And we do need to pass inspections for that.
What do you think about people's ability to work with the city? Is that something that is important too? Like, I know it is, but
Absolutely.
how important is it, I guess?
Oh, extremely important. The city can stop you. They can essentially, hold you up. Everybody has a bad taste in their mouth with, pulling permits. There is added costs for sure. You have your architectural, you have your engineering, you have your permit fees and everything. And it is a more upfront cost, but I've proven a point where that cost is actually saving you money with potentially getting shut down on these projects with orders to comply or stop work orders. There's also the fact too that if you have to order 300 sheets of drywall for a house, you can have it delivered at 2:00 on a Tuesday afternoon on your front lawn, and you don't have to worry about it. Where you're not bringing, if you're working without permits and without the city, you got to start, bringing these sheets of drywall in at nighttime on weekends. It slows a project down big time, which is further delays.
And trust me, regardless of whatever time you bring it in, somebody's peeking through their curtains.
Yeah,
absolutely. The other thing I like too about working with permits is, and this almost always never gets brought up, but to any investor, to any even client that's hiring a contractor, that contractor cannot go to the next stage unless he passes that inspection. So that investor or that client should have, should know that they're being protected by the city as well, because their plumbing is being tested. Structurally that house has to be solid. The insulation, the vapor barrier, everything involved in construction has to be passed by these inspectors.
Lee, because you've done it, I know you've done a bit of both. You kind of started out finding your own trades, and basically being a general contractor almost yourself on your own projects. What do you recommend for people going, maybe a first-time person or even someone a little more experienced? Do you recommend they hire full construction management companies? Are they better off doing it on their own? How would you recommend people go about handling that and those options?
So it's kind of a little bit of a hard question to answer, just because at the end of the day, everybody's different, right? You might have somebody that's investing and buying a project that doesn't have a full-time job, and maybe this is what they want to do. They want to take this one project and manage it themselves, and hire their own trades and so forth, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but there is absolutely a learning curve to doing that, and it's not the fastest way, and it's contrary to what people believe. It's actually not the least expensive way to do things. Most clients and most investors that I know and that I work with, and all of my JV partners, they're all employed, and they can all, they really don't want anything to do with the construction. So they hire, they hire a construction management company, and they basically just, pass the reins over and say, get it done. I would always recommend for an investor looking to get their money back and move on to the next project and start collecting, rental income. That is the best way to do it.
Let's talk finally about the biggest mistakes that you see investors making as far as renovations go.
Oh boy. The biggest mistakes I see people making. One is when they try to do things themselves. That's one. I guess the other thing too, it goes back to what Sandy just asked, and that's when they try to GC the projects on their own. I see too many investors and clients fail at that, and then they, halfway through a project, they start looking for a contractor to come in and pick up the pieces, or a construction management company to pick up the pieces. Clients and investors have to realize that this has become a full-time business, and this is what we do full time, 7 days a week. And we have set contracts in place with our electricians. We have set contracts in place with our plumbers and our HVAC, contractors. And we know what they're doing. And we essentially hold the warranty for everything. So if we're working with the same people, the clients are automatically protected under our company. So that I find is a mistake as well, where clients will work with too many different people. And when something goes wrong, the fingers start getting pointed at whose responsibility it is. And I see that time and time again in the construction industry, where, you're bringing in 2 different electricians, 2 different plumbers, 2 different contractors, and everybody's pointing the finger, and the clients at the end of the day are left with a big mess.
Let's talk finally about the biggest mistake you ever made as far as renovations go.
Biggest mistake I ever made was, I guess back when I first started this and I first started working with contractors, was working with a contractor and doing exactly what I just said, which was trying to speed a project up by bringing in my own people when a contractor had that contract. So, to speed him along, I would try to hire a painter or try to hire a tile guy or try to bring my own plumber in. And even though I thought I was trying to help the situation by push the project forward, it actually pulls a project back. So that was, I've made that mistake. I see some clients, still try to do that. We work it out, but that definitely was a mistake. The other mistake that I made too was I took on too many projects at once for myself at the time, and that can get frustrating as well. I mean, I came through it. It worked out very well, but I think everybody has a different appetite for stress and what they want to handle. So everybody has a different comfortability level with how many projects they want to take on. And at the end of the day, we're still, I guess, a mid-size construction company. We're absolutely trying to go and grow and take on more work. And we're going to get there. But right now we're running pretty tight.
Let's talk about finishes. Because I mean, the next portion of our buy, fix, refi, and rent is the refi portion. So what types of finishes should we be using to get the best? Like, I mean, I know it's sort of, it's almost a silly question in that, well, of course, if you use the higher finishes, you're going to get a higher refi. But let's just say then what things should we focus on to get the best refi?
So when we do our projects, what we've learned and what I've learned is most likely, yeah, they do look at finishes for sure, but it really boils down to a lot of things. It boils down to your floor plans. It boils down to units, your unit configuration, and also the square footage of the actual project you're buying as well. We have a standard that we use for every single house, and it's worked very well with us. So we don't use we're not using like the low end stuff, but we're also not at the high end. We're using a nice finish that all our clients seem to like, the appraisers seem to like as well, and also very importantly, the tenants seem to like. So there's no issues with the units that we're finishing. They get rented almost right away. So we're using the same laminates, we're using the same casings, the same doors, the same tiles, the same bathtubs. It's almost become like a standard home that people are buying now. Everything is really the same finish across the board, right down to the same colors on the walls.
Why don't you go? Because for listeners or viewers here that are watching, you're actually in one of your finished or almost finished projects. Why don't you just have maybe at the kitchen or something, we can have a quick look and you can talk about.
Yeah, let me just go walk down the stairs here. That also helps too, by the way, when you have your finishes all picked out. you don't have to think about things, which helps speed the process along. So for us, we have everything on a pre-order sheet. So we just really write down the square footage and the linear footage that we need of whatever it is we need at the time, and we send it off to our supplier, and it gets shipped out almost the next day. We don't have to wait to go and pick things out and wait for homeowners to go pick things out. But let me just flip this around. So this is a house that we just finished. Actually, I'll show you guys the foyer first. Hold on. So this is essentially a 5-unit semi-detached that's 3,700 square feet.
Okay.
Can you guys see it?
Yeah, we can see it. It looks great.
We kept a lot of the old stuff, a lot of the old charm, because you can't replicate that anymore, and we just kind of made it flow, like all the old trim and stuff. I'll take you into unit number 1. And that's sort of like a standard floor that we use for everything. We painted the fireplace walls, put up some fancier sort of light fixtures. Can you guys see the kitchen?
Yeah, we can see it. It looks good. I like it.
That's a standard kitchen that we use. So really, it's a standard in every single project. It's a standard quartz countertop that we use as well. A little bit of an upgrade on the light fixtures, but we have all the standard slimline pot lights in the ceilings.
And now let me just ask you, so for the, I see that you're not quite done the project yet, but there is no appliances except for the microwave there. I guess I guess it's, the tenants aren't expected to put in the appliances, or are they provided by the landlord?
Well, we put the appliances in, but the clients obviously pay for it.
Yeah.
There's standard bathroom tiles that we go with. We always tile the bathroom ceilings.
Got a pot light in there too. I'd say that's definitely above mid-level for sure. I think it looks really good, and so that gives people an idea of. So for those of you who couldn't see what Lee was showing us, you could hear we've got the quartz countertop, we've got some nicer tile, nicer light fixtures, not just the standard, box contractor packs or anything like that. They all have, there's crown everywhere. I'd say that's definitely higher than a mid-level finish for sure. When you're talking about rental
it is.
property.
We also always finish the stairs, so I don't know if you can see the stairs there.
Yeah.
We cap the stairs with treads and risers. Sometimes we build the staircase. We always put, the nicer railings with the wrought iron pickets and everything on there as well. And we find that it just gives it a little bit more of a wow factor when you walk in and you see the nice dark stained stairs and the black wrought iron pickets.
Okay, so that right there is actually even just the hallway of the building, right? Like that's not even in one of the units.
If you can see down, that's just
Very
all
nice.
common area.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Lee. Well, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, you guys can give me a shout at 416-525-5951. I'm happy to talk to anybody or answer any questions. If I don't answer, I'm probably on a job site, so just send me a text message and I'll give you a shout right back.
Sounds great. Okay, thanks for sharing everything with us today, Lee.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye, guys. Bye, Rob.
Yeah.
Bye, Sarah.